There are at least 3 reasons that stand out to me for why Solo Leveling is such a popular anime right now, and I'll give you a bonus 4th reason at the end too. If Solo Leveling was trying to disguise itself as just another generic power fantasy whose world is explained by video game cliches, then it would be a really good disguise. But the big reason why people like it is that the show is just plain fun and entertaining, and that shouldn't be overlooked. The animation's usually pretty good, the pacing doesn't waste a lot of time, so that helps. But here are 3 more things that set this anime apart. Let's check it out. I've been impressed with Solo Leveling's episode endings because the cliffhangers they use feel organic. They happen within the flow of the story. It throws off the rhythm in unusual places, and you think, well, I can't stop there. Instead of building up to a dramatic moment, the show will set up a goal or a plan that Jinwoo has, and then it'll end the episode right in the middle of fulfilling that plan or goal. A lot of anime try to use cliffhangers to end an episode, but they're usually too obvious or overdramatic to really be effective. A lot of them spend so much drama building up to that cliffhanger that when it finally comes, I think, okay, that's a good place to stop, which is probably the opposite of what they want. With Solo Leveling, it feels like there's unfinished business when you get to the episode's end, because each episode is not a self-contained story. Those edges of the different story arcs bleed over into the next episode and pull the viewer along to keep watching. If you're unfamiliar with the story, Solo Leveling follows Sung Jin-woo, who's apparently 24 even though he looks like a high schooler. With his father passed away and his mother sick, it falls to Jinwoo to provide for the family, himself, his bedridden mother, and his little sister. Jinwoo's nickname is humanity's weakest hunter, but he still goes on dungeon raids to try to earn a living. This world is like modern-day Korea, except it has monsters that only people called hunters can kill using magical weapons. Of course, Jinwoo doesn't stay the weakest hunter forever. He gains the ability to level up and improve his strength, which supposedly only he can do. There's nothing all that remarkable about this setup other than it's a popular type of story that works really well with audiences right now. But there is one thing the anime does that you'll notice right away. I remember riding on a bus as a little kid to go see the planetarium, and the bus driver did that thing where he yelled at some other kid to pull his arm in or was going to get knocked off. And I kept thinking, how crazy would that be if the kid actually lost his arm right there? It can be a bit of a shock the first time you see someone lose a limb in Solo Leveling. Some shows seem to have this contract where they can beat up their characters as much as they want, including blood loss, as long as all the damage they receive is healable. Nothing can be permanent. Even if it's an action-oriented show with a lot of blood, not nearly as many shows have characters actually lose limbs, and if they do, it's a big dramatic plot point. But with Solo Leveling, people die or lose limbs all the time. While the graphic nature of that violence is one reason why Solo Leveling is popular, there's a deeper reason why that violence is appealing to the viewer. It's actually a good example of the same type of controlled danger that we crave when we visit a haunted house or watch a horror movie. I think you can order different types of entertainment based on how far removed the viewer is from the danger. A really good haunted house would be at the top, because you're actually physically present where the danger is occurring, especially if the actors playing the monsters can make physical contact with you. Solo Leveling would be a couple of levels down from that. A slasher film would be next, because there's no limit on the type of violence that's shown, but you're not physically present where the danger is. Next would be animated gore, where the danger shown does not have limits, but it's also stylized and somewhat unrealistic. After that will be a live-action movie that has blood, but the violence is censored, like in a PG-13 film. A lot of Nintendo games would be in that final level, where all the violence is completely stylized and there's no blood. Let me know if you can think of some categories that I missed. Solo Leveling is interesting because it bounces back and forth between a few different categories. It has blood and severed body parts, but the stakes are lower because some of that damage can be completely healed by magic. The show raises the danger level back up by showing characters suffering permanent loss early on. People die or lose limbs forever, even in the first episode, and the healing magic is apparently unable to work on them once enough time has passed. There's always this question then of not just will the characters be killed, but will they suffer permanent damage even if they do escape? Or will the healers get there in time to erase the effects of that violence? The main explanation that I see people give for Solo Leveling's popularity is that it's a power leveling fantasy. And while that's true, I don't think that's the whole picture. Supposedly these Zero to Hero shows appeal mostly to young men who are told by their society to be strong, but who might feel like they're isolated or overwhelmed sometimes. Being able to level up from a place of powerlessness to near godlike abilities is very appealing, especially if it comes from a special skill that only they have. But I don't know if this fits a lot of anime watchers. I don't think there are a whole lot of viewers who feel like they're on the bottom rung of society's ladder. Of course, there are people in real life who feel this way, but another place where you'll find this type of person is in video games. You almost never start out a video game playing a character who's a seasoned veteran with amazing magical equipment. Usually you start out as the part-timer at a low-class item shop who has to beat up a puddle with a stick to level up because everything else can kill you. If RPGs have taught us one thing, it's that people really like to see a character start out weak and then climb up bit by bit to become the mega powerful overlords of their surroundings. It's that aspect of building up the weak character that people enjoy, and that doesn't mean that the player or viewer has to completely identify with the character, or that everybody dreams of smashing everything around them with their overpowered snowflake powers that they got by being special. People like solo leveling because that type of story is just satisfying to watch. If you do want to identify with the character, then solo leveling gives you the best of both worlds. You get to vicariously live out a life where you've got these unique powers, but since you can level up, you can also pretend that your strengths are the result of your own efforts. Now for the bonus reason. I explained earlier that solo leveling is really good at episode endings, but it's also pretty good at intros as well. Let's dive into the opening scene and see how it tells you in 5 minutes what it would take a normal show a full episode to do. The opening shot lets us know that this is a flashback from 3 years ago, so we know it's not part of the immediate story. There's a brief bit of dialogue that takes exactly 15 seconds to establish that there are dangerous creatures who are immune to regular human weapons, but there are also humans called hunters who have the ability to fight them. The show then immediately jumps into a series of action shots right in the middle of a battle. During this battle, we see that hunters can use magic, and we see how gory the show is willing to get as some of the hunters get chewed in half by the ants. It's pretty cool. Next, we see a healer closing up severe wounds with some healing magic, so we know that some of those gruesome wounds can be instantly repaired. The show will be bloody, but it won't be this endless series of grimdark suffering. The rest of the battle shows us how important the differences between hunter ranks are and gives us a lot more action. It's only after all of this that we get a more traditional bit of exposition, where a narrator explains the basic setup of monsters versus hunters, dimensional gates, what the different ranks are, and the fact that no one can level up their ranking once their hunter powers have been awakened. This narration takes about 40 seconds. Most shows would try to start with a narrator who explains ranks and gates and so forth before maybe showing you a few action shots here or there. But solo leveling gets most of its world building out of the way in an opening scene that's packed with action and suspense and clocks in at around 4.5 minutes. It's honestly a pretty impressive way to start. Once the flashback ends, we move to the present and get introduced to Jinwoo, and some of the characters will be important for that first arc. Again, the show is fast-paced with its introductions. In about 3.5 minutes, we meet the group and learn that Jinwoo's the weakest hunter of humanity. We also find out that he's poor and can't afford good magical equipment. And we learn that healers are a valuable resource that not every team is willing or able to afford. The show sets up the first dungeon raid, and from there, we're off and running. You're already familiar with this world, and less than 10 minutes have passed. Let me know your thoughts on solo leveling, or if anyone else caught the fact that Jinwoo's voice and even his personality seem to be changing as he levels up. It's kind of like video game puberty, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.